Hi, and welcome to this installment of Frank and Mary here in Southborough. If you haven't seen this show before, my name is Art Bergeron. My day job is as an elder law attorney at Myrick O'Connell up the street in Westborough, but this is not about my day job. It's about my friends Frank and Mary. If you've seen my seminars, you know that Frank and Mary's goal in life is to live in their house until they die and be buried in the backyard. And if you identify with that, the point of this show is to let you know the people you need to know and the programs you need to know about in order to stay at home. So, and my wonderful co-host is here, Doug Peck, and we've been doing these shows because he's a Southborough guy who has been there for a long time, and his day job is really focusing on a lot of these issues with his organization, Seniors Helping Seniors. He invites these wonderful guests, but first we're going to ask our friend Pam LeFrancois who is kind enough to come on the show just to talk about a little bit about what is going on in Southborough right now. You know, we've got all this Omicron stuff showing up. We're just trying to find out if anything is changing in terms of the senior center. And then I can ask Doug to introduce our wonderful guest whom we have seen before, but we're welcoming her back.
Yeah.
Pam.
Well, in town right now, what we are asking people to do, or re-asking people at the senior center, is when you come into a public building, please wear a mask. That has pretty much been our only, it's not a change, but we're kind of, put up new signs. We're re-mentioning it to all our groups to be, cautious, wear your mask. I think people were getting a little lax about it. So we're just reminding people. Other than that, there has been no change. I have not heard anything from the Board of Health or the powers that be in town that anything else is going to change. I mean, that being said, it could happen, but right now, I don't expect anything, anything new. Haven't heard any rumblings of any new changes or requirements. So what we're doing is we're carrying on. We're doing our thing. We're basically operating in as safe a manner as we possibly can, asking people to wear a mask. We're running all our programs in smaller groups with distance between people. So it's kind of a shell of what we normally have. When we have programs, we're limiting them to 25 people so people can spread out. That includes like movies or music programs or educational programs. We're still doing drive-throughs about once a month. At this point, that's pretty much our format going forward into the first of the year. We, in the fall, we started out kind of optimistic. There was a time there before things changed that we thought we were going to be able to do bus trips and kind of get back to a little bit more normal. So we planned a lot of activities and bus trips, and then things got worse again. So all of those had to be canceled. And, there's been a few times where we went back and forth on it. Right now, we're just going to sit tight. We're planning more short term than long term, kind of only going out a couple of months and kind of waiting to see what happens. We're keep our fingers crossed for the spring.
And it sounds like, Pam, this is reflecting the reality of so many things. It's like you just kind of accept the predictability of unpredictability, that you're just not planning long term. Doug, I bet you're bumping into it, trying to figure out things in your own business right now,
right?
Dealing with seniors.
Yep, absolutely. Pam, when is the senior center closed the next 2 weeks? Are you closed just on
Friday and Monday. And New Year's Day is, I believe that's a Saturday.
Right.
That Friday.
So you closed the 24th and the 30th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the 24th and the 27th, I believe.
The
so
27th.
Friday and Monday.
Oh, okay.
And then probably the 31st and New Year's Eve, the 31st. Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Well, Pam,
Right.
thank you very much. You're busy trying to maintain everything there. We really appreciate your willingness to come on occasion. And if something drastic happens, we'll invite you back. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So Doug, whom do we have on again? Another smiling face.
Yes, we do. She's back for an encore performance, Rebecca Wild-Wesley. She runs a geriatric care manager practice. They're now called aging life care managers or specialists. in the area. And I've been talking to her about a number of things, because coming out of COVID and now going into we're not out of it yet. We're still, obviously in the midst of it, but now we're, in the holiday season, I think that poses some additional stresses for families, particularly for families that have not been together for the last maybe year or more. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to handle some of those stresses and what they are. So Rebecca, thank you for coming on this morning.
It's great to be here. It's great to be on screen with you both. However, I look forward to seeing you in person, hopefully
Yes.
sometime in 2022.
Right.
I thought it might be helpful if we were to chat a little bit about what it's going to be like for people who haven't seen each other in 2 years, and to perhaps understand the toll
Mhm.
that's been taken on by people who may have a diagnosed dementia or
Mhm.
may not have dementia, may not have previously been a person who was perceived to be depressed, and now seems to be. That families may see changes in their older loved ones, perhaps Frank or Mary,
Mhm.
and to be able to perhaps understand what's going on and to set expectations as to how can they tolerate the milieu if there's a lot of people in the home and things like that.
Yes, because it is going to be unusual for people to get together. It's different. You haven't, a lot of people even didn't get together over the summer months because they couldn't fly, they couldn't do a lot of different things.
Right.
And so, what should your expectations be? What should you do? How should you set things up to make it the best, possible holiday season with new people in the home that haven't been there for a while?
Yeah, and I think the challenge around mask wearing is still going to be a reality. You hate to have to talk about COVID when there are other things that have to, that are exciting going on or that are changes, but the reality still will be most families may end up, at least when they're with their elder, they'll be wearing masks. The difficulty around understanding what someone says when they're behind a mask, and losing the visual cues of the smiles or a familiar, the face from here down. Yeah. That's really a lot of our visage. And that's people who have some level of dementia will remember faces for a very long time. And if those faces aren't there, that will really make it seem as though perhaps they're worse than they really are. But I also think that we may find that people are showing memory problems that we, as the younger family members, might not have realized. This may be the first time that you've seen mom in 2 years, Mary, and that she's not, whether she's a guest in your home or you're in her home, it could be that'll be the first time you've realized that she's lost ground.
Because it's very different to spend hours with somebody rather than a 10 or 15-minute phone conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so what should they be looking for? I mean, because again, a lot of people want to go into denial about this, but it really is an important time to sort of take stock of where things are with their older parents.
Well, if mom always made the family dinner and really can't seem to do it, the meat comes out of the oven cold, hadn't been turned on. The complexity of managing a meal, even for 1 or 2 people, to say nothing of a larger group of people, if that level of seamlessness that used to be there isn't there anymore, that's going to be something to pay attention to. If you happen to be going into the fridge and looking for milk and you see that it's spoiled, if there's a change in the cabinets, things. I often find people, as they develop some levels of dementia that get in the way of memory and decision making, they keep all of their food on the counter now instead of putting it in cabinets because they can't remember where it is. So the normally neat kitchen isn't neat anymore, it's cluttered. And that's because there's concern that they're not going to be able to find something when they need it. So that's going to be pretty notable. Are there sometimes that could look like, we call that clutter now, as opposed to something that's more serious, but it's really related to being afraid that they'll miss something, or I think also you often tend to find people buy a lot of products. There's a lot of toilet paper, there's a lot of paper towels all of a sudden, partly
Yeah.
because of the news, partly because they can't remember if they have them and they don't want to run out, and you just find you open a cabinet and things are falling out on you because they've overbought.
Mhm.
And you know, that's a noticeable thing. The pills are expired. When you see the prescription bottles in the cabinet, have they expired? Does your mom have a pill box she's using? Is she managing your father's medications and your father doesn't seem to be as good? Maybe she's not able to manage that. There's so many little clues that could get lost in the hustle bustle of a holiday gathering
Mhm.
when everybody's in the house.
Mhm.
You don't want to be a detective,
Right.
but you want to be aware and paying attention.
Mhm. Yeah, it can be a very hectic time in there. So I think one of the other good things to think about is to, give everybody some space, slow down a little bit. Don't make it, if you can help it, as busy as it normally is. It's going to be a little bit different. Would you
Right.
agree?
Doesn't have to be a 3-ring circus.
Right.
Especially if you think of multi-generations, when kids are excited and they're maybe running around, and maybe there's Christmas music on, and maybe there is, I don't know, do people watch football at Christmas time? But maybe there's
Yes.
something on TV, and then there are the lights on the tree, and, like
Mhm.
all of that sensory stimulation can be really overwhelming.
Mhm.
And lots of, again, you haven't seen a person for a couple of years, everybody's coming at you, and it could very quickly become overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then I think most of us, when we're overwhelmed, we might get grouchy,
Mhm.
we might get angry, we might express frustration that comes across in a socially unacceptable way. And I think a good advice for anybody is, when things are too crazy, just go in another room,
Mhm.
sit, put your feet up a little bit, give permission for the person who seems to be overwhelmed by the environment to just take a break from it.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean everybody has to slow down, but you need to be able to have permission to go to a quiet room.
Mhm.
We call
Yeah.
those namaste rooms when we're in an adult day health center or an assisted
Yeah.
living, but we need to have a namaste room, I think, in our homes sometimes at the holidays. Just,
Mhm.
it's okay to leave for an hour, take a nap, and regroup.
Yeah. So.
Taking a
Names are
nap
tough.
and regrouping. That sounds like a great idea. And any time of the year.
Yeah.
And Rebecca, have you been seeing among your folks that I know there's this Omicron thing happening, but that many of the people who were really depressed over COVID have kind of come out of it? Or are you seeing a lot of a continuing residual concern among many?
What I tend to see more is anxiety than we haven't really seen a real depression for the most part, but people's anxiety, which is really linked to depression and
Mhm.
some dementia sometimes, doesn't all go to the same together, but sometimes it does. People are still anxious. And if we give people options for a consultation, there are still people who are electing to do it by Zoom and not to be in person. And I think that the COVID pandemic for the last 2 years has pulled out parts of our nature that maybe have always been underlying and have risen to the front. Maybe you were a little bit of an anxious person before, and now your anxiety rules your life. It's your new roommate. If depression was an occasional, I think the social isolation just really pushed people into nearly crisis mode at times. So I think things got more so. Just like they talk about our institutions had cracks revealed, I think for all of us, our frailties got revealed during COVID.
Mhm.
The reason why I asked that is that it is just feeling like the Omicron is just revealing that what we thought was a new normal, meaning a new normal, like here's how it's going to be for a long time. And whether that was that you're wearing masks or not, or that you're social distancing or not, and that you're getting like there was going to be a stability to it. But then I was just reading this piece last night. That was this description in The Economist, was that the new normal may be what they refer to as predictable unpredictability. That it could be that there may very well be we're going to be living in this period where there's just this constant change, and you're going to be booking trips and they're going to get canceled. And so maybe you don't want to book trips that are for far away because they're probably going to get canceled. So there's all of this modification in a kind of a style of life that results from, not could be just this individual having a problem, but this much more global change in the kind of stability versus instability of our lives. It's really, I was reading the article and saying to myself, this is a big deal. This is because it's a big deal now for everyone, and especially for seniors, whether you've got a memory issue or not, because one of the things you kind of rely on as a senior is stability. You're not interested in learning new things, I mean, you may be, but you want it to become,
Right.
and it just may not be there. It's I don't know. I'm getting anxious. Right?
The new word out there, I think somehow, I don't know, how words kind of pop up and become the new term, disruptor. Yeah. COVID has been a massive disruptor, and that's an understatement. But, I think that all of us like to have stability in our life. And if there's anything, and not boredom, but stability, we like to be able to rely on things. We like to make plans that come to fruition. And I think that no more so than somebody who perhaps is enjoying regular visits with grandchildren and children and going to the senior center, and all that gets taken away.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cough. I'm muted.
Okay. We're seeing it certainly in our business as well. And, one of the things that I've, been telling families is try to simplify things. I know you want to cram a lot in because you haven't seen people for a long time and you may only be there for a short time, but lower your expectations, take it slower, keep it simple. Everybody wants, a 15 course, Christmas dinner because that's what you did in the past.
Right.
But, keep it simpler, make it 3 courses. You don't have to make 16 desserts. 2 is fine because they never get eaten anyway. So try to keep it simple as much as you can, because it's what you're really trying to do is work with the reality that sometimes people with some forms of memory impairment have, and they can get easily overwhelmed and confused. And you need to think of them and not just the family. That's what they're going to appreciate, is that kind of, to lower that down, because they're probably anxious about having 10 people in their home because they haven't had 10 people in their home for a year, and that's a big anxiety.
And all of us would feel that, I think. And,
I do. Yeah.
So it's even worse for that individual. And I think it's a gift to all of us to be given that opportunity to simplify. By the way.
Yeah.
3 courses versus 10 courses, easy.
Yeah.
It's so funny that you're describing this, because I'm just thinking about, so we all have our own these family situations, right? And there's a in my wife's family there's a sister who has always been the kind of main preparer of kind of everything, right? But this year she's not as really able to do that, right? And so we were just talking to there's a 101-year-old friend of the family, right, who is so disappointed that this 80-year-old person is not going to be able to maintain this, because that's kind of the tradition of Christmas, and how can I be dealing with this? But it goes to what you're just saying. I mean, you have to, especially for the people who were running a lot of those shows, you got to give them a break. You really need to be aware of the, what are you really going for? Are you really going to see them, or are you going for the third dessert?
Right.
That's an excellent point, Rebecca. It's excellent.
I think I read an article a couple weeks ago around Thanksgiving, where many people have had to give up the have 40 people for dinner Thanksgiving. And it was a great article talking about how much is built into these annual events that everybody gets together for. That's usually the burden of which is often carried by the host and
Mhm.
hostess.
Yes.
Right.
And for 2 years, people haven't been doing that. So, and we've talked to several people. My sister-in-law used to do this for Thanksgiving. We have friends who used to have a Christmas party that was a big deal that everybody loved, and they did.
Mhm.
And when we asked them if they want to go back to that, they're happy to not go back to it. It doesn't
Right.
take away from the joy that they
Right.
did it, but it's that permission that they get to do something different. And sometimes we need to have something like COVID that
Right.
stops us in our tracks and gives us a chance to
Yep.
envision what it is that's important
Mhm.
and who the people are important to be with.
Mhm. Absolutely. We did that. We made an
remember.
agreement. I'm sorry. We talked to our kids and said, look, we usually did a big Christmas Day dinner. And this year, because people are not staying as long, but we're sending out for Chinese food with everybody's agreement, because we said, the important thing is not to have people spend 3 hours in the kitchen,
Yeah.
but to spend time together where you can talk and catch up on all the things you haven't been able to catch up on.
Right.
That's more important than, time spent making, pies or whatever,
Right.
where you really aren't communicating. It's
Right.
it's just not happening, because if you don't know what's going to happen, as Arthur said, we don't know if we're going to see him again for the next 3 or 4 months if
Right.
this really pops up. So
Right.
let's spend the quality time together, and that means sharing a meal, but you don't have to prepare the meal.
Yes.
You can
Yeah,
run out and get it, and then sit down and have a nice meal without all the other bother, and then throw everything away afterwards.
I remember
know?
calling my brother, who was he and his wife are now in their early 80s. They live in Orlando, and their 2 sons were home for Thanksgiving. And so I call him at Thanksgiving. I said, I just want to say hello, but I didn't want to, disrupt all of the, festivities. He says, that's okay. He says, we're waiting until about 1 o'clock, and then we're going to pick up the turkey dinner. They're actually they ordered the whole dinner,
Yeah.
right? To be done there, and they're just picking it up. And they said it's a great restaurant, and and the restaurant itself had segued into doing these, kind of takeout complete turkey dinners. So it's changing.
So one of the things I wanted to mention that I think is also happens at Christmas time or New Year's time is when we send out the holiday letter, the missive that's filled with what's been going on and giving that family update. And it's possible that if in the last year, someone in the family has been diagnosed with dementia, it might be that would be the first time you share that information, either in the holiday letter or when the family gets together, to be able to say that these are some changes we've noticed, and this is the medical workup we've done, and these are the arrangements we've made. Not to make it overly heavy, but it might be the first time everybody is together, and how to have that conversation very simply, not overly serious and legal or medical, but it may be that first time for everybody to understand things have changed. And
Yes.
I don't like the term new normal, but this will be how we adjust our life around this new circumstance that one of us is experiencing. Really, in a couple, we often think one person might have dementia and the other person becomes their caregiver. They've just changed everything about their life now. They've now become a caregiver. They've become a care receiver. That shifts it's a powerful dynamic that changes. And that caregiver can't be putting on a 3 to 5 to 10 course meal.
Right.
Everything's just changed.
Yep.
What an interesting way to inform, though, because that is very interesting that you mentioned, because that kind of tradition has arisen over the last 10 or 20 years, that you're seeing more and more. Somebody in the family is kind of doing a summary of kind of what's been going on, right?
Right.
But as a way of communicating in kind of a soft way, that's that something, this has changed in our lives, and we're adjusting to this new reality. That's a really interesting point. This is why they pay geriatric care managers a lot of money, because they're always thinking about this stuff. I mean, it's like, Doug, we talk about this a lot, right? You're constantly telling people, it's like, well, what do they do exactly? Well,
Mhm.
no, they do, that the idea of really helping you try to figure out so many aspects of your life around things that are changing, right?
Right.
It's really
And it's
important.
important things. I'll give you 2 more minutes. One last thing that Rebecca and I talked about that's a follow-up with this is that families may not see everything the same way. What a surprise. So while you might see that, mom or dad has some real memory issues, your brother or your sister may think, oh, that's just normal aging, or that's just
That's
the way
mom.
it is.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important, Rebecca and I talked about it earlier, to get the family together and say, what did we see? What's going on? What's going to be the next steps?
Right.
And quite honestly, a good care manager, wherever they may be, can help sort of facilitate that conversation, mediate a little bit, bring out some points about what could happen, where you could go, what
Right.
might be possible, talk to your PCP, other things like that you may not think about as a family. But
Right.
if there are some tensions going on, you may really need it, they have to be addressed. It's
Right.
now the elephant in the room. And if you let it go, it's only going to get worse. So,
Right.
you need to think about who's going to be the sort of the adult in the room to bring this up and say, we need to really talk about this. It's a
Right.
hard conversation.
It's very difficult. It is. And I think that when I think about what care managers do more and more, it comes down to two things: get the right diagnosis and have difficult conversations,
Yeah.
most difficult conversations. And one usually follows the other.
Mhm.
Right.
But it is difficult.
This has been, so Rebecca, this was Doug's idea to have you back on, I mean, also our ratings go through the roof when you're on. So we like having you, but this has just been, I think, really useful. I think, really to help people think out the kind of the dynamics around Christmas. And this is a great way to end, to be helping people if they do feel that something's going on, but they're all saying to themselves, oh, now what?
Right.
To say this wouldn't be a bad idea, that this would be maybe a good time to have a conference call or a something among the relatives that just all went in their different directions.
That's
And this may be a good time to be bringing in someone like yourself, somebody, a third party who can help people and now think out
right.
what the appropriate next steps might be. So this was really great. So on that cheery note, right? This is a really important conversation. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And
Sure.
Doug, thank you for really thinking this out.
You're
You're
welcome.
great at just kind of figuring out where we really need to be going on this. Doug and I we're just talking about if COVID, if this really does start ramping up, we may also, talk about increasing the number of shows we have, because that was one of the purposes of this, was to keep people informed. But
Yes.
that's all, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? It's
Right.
unpredictability. We'll see.
Yeah.
In the meantime, Rebecca, thank you so much. Have a wonderful Christmas and New Year and all of that. And Doug,
Thank you.
and
Yeah.
for folks who are watching, I know Hanukkah is past, so we're saying kind of Merry Christmas, but enjoy the holiday, however you celebrate it. We'll all see you, hopefully, in 2022. Thank you all.
Keep healthy.
Thank you.
Healthy.
Yes, healthy. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.